Chops Nation, we have no idea what's about to happen.
Hello, I'm Steve
And
Peterson.
I'm Jack Hinkle. Steve, go ahead and roast me. Let's
Oh
go.
my gosh,
Let's
okay.
go.
We have been in this room, this office, for like the last hour, and we have exactly, you want to hear how much content we have?
How much content do we have?
Listen. Right. We have no content because our director of technical services has not once, not twice, but not 3 times. We started this bad boy 4 times. We already had 3 in the can, partly, and Jack would look at the monitor and notice that it was not recording, and he had a spaz attack, and he was like going bananas over here. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here trying to figure out how to sit, and he finally turns it on. I see 2 red lines over there.
It's been one red line the past 3 times.
Oh.
Oh, and then our music stand that holds up the phone.
Oh, yeah.
We have a shrinker. We got a shrinker. It falls
Oh.
down.
So we
And
are
just
on
went,
our 4th. We are on our 4th start time here.
It's true. We were supposed to start recording today.
How?
At
What time, Jack?
2:30.
Yeah, how'd
Steve,
that
I
go?
text Steve last night and I say, "Ayo, Chief,
Yeah.
chops tomorrow?" ? He said 2:30. I get in here at 2:15
Yep.
and I got the gear and he looks at me. He goes, "Jack, I'm really important. I have to make a phone call." And I'm like, "Okay, I can mess around with stuff." And then he gets off the phone. He's like, "Jack, come in here. Help me with Canva." I was like, "Okay." And then we talk about some work stuff, and then it's like 4 o'clock. And you're like, "You want to record?" So I'm like, "Sure." And then, but apparently I don't want to
What
record
time is it
because
now?
now it's 4:22, and this is our 4th take. We've tried to do the same topic. I don't know why we're sharing this, but I think it's funny. We tried to do the same topic 3 times. We can't talk about it anymore. We'll have to can it for next week.
We're gonna do. The reason that we're telling Chops Nation about this is because we are now what we call in educational circles. We're now going to pivot, and because that means what we were doing did not work, or
And
was
continued
trash.
to not work.
Okay, so we are now pivoting, and we are not going to use what we are going to talk about. And now we are going to talk about what happens in your classroom when the plans that you had ready to go don't work.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Those are classic. Perfect example. Our school doesn't have power outages almost ever. We've maybe had one in my 8
Mhm.
years here. If you try and teach piano and the power goes out,
Bad.
you can't. You
Bad.
can't hear the
Wait,
pianos.
you had no power?
I think that might have happened once.
Wow. Okay.
I just think of the one day too I think about was the day.
Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2020, 24 hours before we got let go for COVID. And it was our final day in the afternoon. We were like in the final hour, and something happened where we lost power in the school, and we were kind of in the hallways practicing. We had emergency lighting, but we kind of knew it would be our last day for at least a few weeks.
That was weird.
And
I just
it-
remember a baritone player and the private lesson teacher out in the hallway because
Yes.
there was the emergency light that came on.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And I think every teacher out there knows that sinking feeling in their stomach when they just know whatever they're trying to do in class is just not hitting and you just got to do something different. That's a lonely feeling. Lonely feeling.
That's an awful feeling, but it happens, and I think when it happens, then you have a choice to do something different
Yep.
and try to make it work and try to come up with something a little bit more productive.
You have to. And sometimes you can think quickly on your feet, and sometimes it might take you a second to kind of get the gears rolling with something. And I remember thinking that when we taught block schedule, 84 minutes, if you need to pivot, that's scary because that's a lot of time for something to not go well.
Yes.
But yeah, I know we've all had those moments, or whether that's in class or maybe on the marching band field or something like that. That happens.
Do you remember that time we were out in the marching band field and Scott Spradling was on the tower, and he was talking to the kids about, I forget what he was teaching. He was teaching some visual concept, but he knew he was getting cooked by himself because he kept on redoing the directions, and then I don't know if there was a technical malfunction with the soundtrack or the metronome, but it just was like a comedy of errors.
Is that
And
when the papers flew
well,
off?
it was something about he was like,
That was the origin of Travis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like his lesson plans blew off the tower, and
He goes literally flying out
yeah,
away
it was
from
like,
me.
yeah. So, of your plans going up in smoke.
Yeah, teaching visuals as like a choreography as a band director, that's lonely, dude. That's lonely.
But you do a good job of it.
Thank you. I don't
That's
always.
just,
I don't
that's
always
just my
feel
way
like
of
that.
saying I don't want to do it.
Okay.
No, I think
Okay, kids, plie, and then 4 counts. Okay, wait, let me check my notes. Okay, and then lunge to the right. A count. I thought
no,
it was
wait.
lunge to the left. Lunge to the left. Is that
No,
after the
no,
4
it's
starts?
6 count lunge,
Oh.
6 count lunge.
It's
yeah.
24 counts. Do whatever you want.
When I teach,
Plie.
yeah, I think, don't you teach visuals like this? You're like, okay, let me see the first 8 counts, slow motion, and then you watch the kids that you know are
Yes,
supposed to have it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And then you go, okay, that was the first 8 counts.
Good. Let's
Show
try
me
it
what
again.
comes next.
Yeah, you're like, do you know what comes next?
They're like,
Yeah.
do you?
They're
I'm
like, no.
I asked you first.
I think that's fine.
Well, that's good because you're my boss now, so that's good.
I think that's
How
okay.
it's going to be this summer. But now all the kids know my dark secret. They already knew.
They know that.
They
kids
know that game.
that.
The
but,
seniors are like, nice one,
but
Mr.
you've
Hinkle,
got
yeah.
kids that are dancers that are like in the front 2 rows that know how to do this stuff, and
No,
it's
we
like
pay those kids. They're on payroll.
I know they
They think they're getting a grade for this.
they shovel us out of trouble.
Yes. Oh, my gosh.
So you've had piano with no power.
Oh, dude. Okay, wait. Let me throw you a bone here. Let me throw you a
boy.
bone.
Really?
Here's Steve has like inspired me to draw more in class. That's the truth. That is the truth. Draw. DRAW.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will confess. I'm confessing.
Hold the microphone up like this. Okay, go ahead.
Now this feels different when you hold the mic rather than I feel like I'm in trouble. Okay, back in like pre-2019, we had that giant projector in the band room, right?
Yes.
It was huge. And I got an iPad that year and could do the AirPlay thing, and I was like, this is great. I can draw on this, the huge screen, awesome. And then we got the BenQ, and the BenQ was tiny, and I went, Psh, I'm never going to use that thing. I missed the projector and the Apple TV.
The
blah,
BenQ is
blah,
like
blah.
a large iPad. It's on the wall, right? You can draw on it.
It's like a big iPad. It's a yeah.
It's a tablet.
smartboard. Yeah, it's a
Right.
giant tablet TV. But when we teach intermediate concert band together, you would draw on that thing all the time, and there were always like rhythms you would use or just concepts like forte, piano, crescendo, and
Okay.
I don't know if you're like a visual learner. Like, are you visual?
Yes.
Is that your thing? Okay. Because, see, that makes sense because you do that. And I don't think I am as much. I think I'm more auditory. But seeing you do that all the time was like, I need to start doing that more because you would always do that when something wasn't working. You would draw and you give the kids a different way to do it and you kind of scaffold through your drawings. And I was like, I need to do that more. I need to draw more.
Oh.
And so now this year I've actually
Jack did scaffold a lot. Like you would do a rhythm. You would do like a very simple rhythm, put it on the BenQ board, and then you would start adding things to make it more difficult.
See, you're giving me credit for this, but I got that from you. You did that 2 years ago and it blew my mind. I know that probably sounds bad, but whenever I've seen like scaffolding as a rhythm, I've seen it in like the first count, the second count, the third. Okay, let's do all 3 counts. But you did it by starting it easier and then making it harder. And the kids like destroyed it in a good way. It was awesome. And I was like, I need to do that all the time.
Wow.
Steve,
Woo!
and that's where the drawings came from because I saw you do that and I was like, "Oh, I know how I can do this. I can do that."
Oh,
And then we
well,
started doing it this year and then the kids read better. It's all about drawing. That's where we pivoted. That was like some inspiration that you gave me.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. And same thing like in jazz band. I did that
Yeah,
a lot this
okay.
year. Or like thinking about concepts that the kids could share and through writing or drawing.
Okay,
And that was
okay.
that was good. So that's when pivoting, we talked about that, comes to mind. That's where I went with that. Drawing. That was good.
So when things don't go well, yeah.
You could quit. Just quit.
Oh,
Take a nap.
Do you ever feel like when you have a really good day, you're like, dude, I could teach until I'm 80 years old. Like, you're like, I could do this all day, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, this is great.
When you have a good day teaching, it's like a really fun thing.
It is. You're like, oh my gosh, that was awesome.
And you're like, oh, I'm getting paid for this.
Right.
This is sweet.
And you like feel really hopeful about yourself as an educator.
Yes.
And you feel proud of yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, like our kids are like killing it.
Yes.
And then you come in the very next day, and you're like, would it be bad if I quit mid-year? What
Would it be bad if I quit right now?
right now? Like, do I have to finish the day? Like, don't you have days like that are paired next to the days that are really good? And it's not even the bad that's so painful. It's the going from the top to the bottom, and your neck is like, ow, because you're like trying to figure out what just happened.
Yeah, the whiplash is real.
It's horrible. But then maybe you're down in the tank, and then you come back up, and you're like, I'm back.
Yes.
And then I have a hard time of figuring out, well, what am I?
And then you come into school the next day and you're kind of like doing this, like your eyebrows are
Right.
Like what?
Right.
Who are you? What do you want? Like
What?
you're like very skeptical about your whole
Right.
job.
Right. You're just like, what Mr. Peterson's going to show up today?
Right.
Right. You're
Yeah.
like-
okay, kids, you gonna learn? You want to learn today? Is that what you want?
And they're like, yeah. We're like, let's go.
And you're like, I don't trust you. I don't
No,
believe you. Take
that-
this worksheet.
That's fascinating because, I mean, that does go on in my mind. Like, wow, that went really great. I was amazed. The kids were so engaged, and they did such a good time. They did such a great thing, and the pacing was great, and the energy. Then the very next day, it can be like, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't have an ear. I clearly don't have any patience. I have no relationship with the kids. My class control is often awful, and I got nothing done. Like, I am a horrible teacher. That can go from day to day. And again, I think it's the up and down, traveling that lonely graph of excellence and awfulness.
That's like when I do this with my
I
hair
know
to the
you
kids.
do
I'm
that.
like,
You look like Jim Carrey in the courtroom. It's crazy.
oh, from Liar Liar.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm a
Okay.
little too young for that. I've seen it, but it's been a while. But that's
Yeah.
a good movie.
Not appropriate to watch on Chops. But anyway.
No.
So
I know what you mean because it's especially the ones that are really good and then you go into prep period because you come back and you sit down in your office and then you kind of lean back in your chair.
you're like,
and
yeah, I want some more of that.
Let's
Then
do
you
that.
let your guard down.
So I was going to say just that is that like you think about it for a second and then you're like, wait, I'm getting punked. Like, no. And then like you don't tell anybody about it that whole day. Cause like the worst thing
Yes.
is like if I just had like an awesome jazz rehearsal and I walk in your office, I was like, Steve, dude, we were playing this bassy tune. Dude, we were swinging. The
Right.
kids were popping the
Yeah,
accents on
yeah.
the ands. The forte pianos were clean. Our time was impeccable. And then we go try and play swing rhythms tomorrow and we
And then
fall
it's
apart.
awful.
Yeah. So I never like share that stuff because I'm like, I don't want to speak it out of existence.
Well, what kind of sick existence is that you don't even share your positive experiences? Are you would you be more apt to come in and say, Steve, I'm thinking about going into software design.
software development?
Yeah.
Okay. You're right.
Thank you. End of podcast. It's
Chops
called
is actually done forever because this is
Chops,
Steve trying to tell me he's
also
right.
known as Steve's Right. Okay,
Steve's
go ahead.
right. I don't know. I don't do that. I don't know. I don't like to do that. I don't like to do that because I don't want to speak it out of existence. I'd rather just tell the kids. I'd rather just let them know they're doing a good job. Anyway, is there any other career that is like as whiplash heavy as ours?
What if surgeons were like that?
Dude, the spleen just like moved. It's not where it used to be. I don't know how to do this.
I don't
I
want
don't
to
know.
do this anymore.
Gosh.
After lunch, I'm tapping out. Can you sew them back up?
You sew them back
Right.
up. I'm getting angry calls from parents. I was 2 minutes late to checking my patient's attendance.
Yes.
I just think like you think about like sitting and like I could never be like a work at like at a desk job from 8 hours a day. I think I'd lose my mind.
Right.
But there are some moments, you know, the computer's going to be the same computer every day. The spreadsheets behave the same every day. Did that just sound like I was like bashing kids? Oh, I was not supposed to be.
No,
a
it
kid
sounded
bash.
like
This
you were
was different.
bashing people that sit at a desk
No,
job.
I'm saying that like works for a lot of people because like the how consistent it is like enjoyable. But I think part of the fun of teaching is the inconsistency of it. You're solving a different puzzle every day. I don't want to put the same Sudoku puzzle together 180 times a year. I don't want to do that, even though it might be easier. Did I just go sideways? Am I like getting too mixed in my references?
No, I think it's okay. No, the consistency, the raw material. We're working with humans, so if you're in human services, I would say put all human services together. There's going to be that flow.
Yeah.
If you're working with a machine, you're trying to get the machine to work for you. It's a little bit more consistent, and you're basing it on your effort every day. I think what's really interesting is that your effort can be extremely high in teaching, and then your output, your effort could be high, and your output, like what you're giving, could still be bad.
That is so true.
Or you could be high effort, and then your output is good. Then it could be both those things, and then the student reception. Like you feel confident about what you're saying and how you're saying it, but the student reception is not good, or the same thing, and then the student reception is better.
You just went quadrant on us.
I know but you
Effort
kind
and
of
output.
on one of our first 4 takes, you were saying that
An hour ago.
An hour ago on cut 2, you were saying that you can't have a good teaching day unless the students are engaged.
No, you can't. You can't because you're not teaching if the students aren't engaged.
So
I mean,
we're
you
at the
could
mercy
be
of the
teaching.
kids all the time. But then if the kids aren't doing a good job, that's on us.
It is.
Oh my gosh, what kind of masochistic job is this?
Well, at least we get paid super. Oh, wait
You
a
get
second.
your some-
Wait a second.
So
Hey,
wait,
our insurance
when-
benefits are great.
if the lesson doesn't go well, it's
Quit
on
your job.
us.
Just
No,
quit.
it's
Don't
on-
come
it's on-
back.
it's on us.
It's on us.
And if the
lesson doesn't go
teacher,
well.
if it goes well, it's on the kids.
That's what Ken Snook would say, dude.
dude.
I think that's true. So
But
that's baffling,
When do
though.
we get to have fun? When do we get to say
We do not get credit. We don't. This is a noble profession where we take any credit we can get and we give it all away.
Is that
Because,
true?
yes, it is true. Because, Steve, if any person ever came up to you after Jazz 1 plays and they're like, man, Jazz 1 sounded awesome, the first thing you say every time is like, yeah, the kids had an awesome performance.
Right.
You would never go, thank you. I spent 3 hours lesson planning for Tuesday, January 16th, just so we could make those forte pianos happen. You would never say that.
True.
You'd never say that. But wait, can we go back to the effort output thing?
Yeah.
Because you've had classes where you are working your tail off and the kids don't get much better. And it's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong.
Right.
But it's just like whatever happened wasn't hitting and you were going for it. And then you sit at your desk and you're like, what was that? But you've also had days that you like may have been like kind of sick or like maybe like headachy and you're like not like
Into it. You
totally
don't
with
feel
it.
good, yeah.
And the kids do great and you sit down at your desk and you're like, what was
happened?
that? Right?
Right.
It works both ways.
But so some of that's just out of our control.
That's what I was
so
going to
how
say.
can I be responsible for that?
Are you responsible for that? Are we about to change our opinion on shops? Oh my
Well,
gosh, I'm going to have to edit the socials for this. Going to have to
It's-
change apples.
if-
I don't think you're I don't know. If a building is going to burn down, the fire department goes either way. If it is unstoppably going to fall down,
Okay.
the fire department's going to be there.
Okay. That's a really bad analogy because if the building is just standing there minding its business, the fire department doesn't show up. So what does that have to do
I'm
with
saying
it?
if it's on fire, if the building is on fire and it's gonna go down, it's like not put outable.
Right.
The fire department's still gonna be there with the water hose.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I think there are some days that no matter how hard you try, any teacher tries, there may just not be a good lesson that's going to come out of that. I think that's true. I think it's impossible to have 180 days a year of awesome teaching because the extrinsic factors are just not going to line up for you every day.
Right.
But I think that if you are there and you are aware, or at least trying to be aware of the extrinsic factors and listening to the kids and thinking about how you're presenting your content and how you can change that, I think that's all we can do. It's where pivoting comes in.
Right.
Right? This was kind of depressing.
I know. Where does the teacher get the credit? Come on.
Don't you have some plaques up? Hey, Michiana Outstanding Music Educator Award presented to Steve Peterson in recognition of outstanding leadership. I'm reading a plaque on his wall. Outstanding leadership and excellence to professional music education. Concord High School, sponsored by Quinlan and Fabish.
No, well, there you go. I must be a good teacher. Wow.
Scott Spradling designed our T-shirts for marching band, and we always give the kids like performance undershirts because they all have to have the same color so they don't show under a uniform, etc. And I think one he made a couple years ago was "Work hard in silence and let success be your noise." I don't have that shirt anymore because it doesn't fit me anymore, but I remember the quote, and I was like, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good quote to live by. Work hard in silence, let success be your noise.
No, I know all that stuff. I was trolling you, but it is. I mean, there is some Mr. Trollerson is back, but there is something to that though, because I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about teachers that I think of in my mind that are like outstanding. I was like, well, clearly they're a part of the secret sauce.
You just performed with Dave Bennett. Well, he just performed with you, I should say.
Yes.
At the Jazz Festival, legendary clarinetist.
Yes.
And when you introduced him to the audience, you said, the old saying is true. The bigger they are, the nicer they are.
Yeah,
and
true.
he was not talking about the size of a person, but their
Right.
reputation. And Dave, I mean, I didn't talk to him, but, you know, his presence and the way he presented himself to
Yes.
the audience and kids seemed pretty humble.
Yeah, it was.
And I don't think he'd be as successful as he was if he didn't have that
Right.
kind of sense of humility and time. And, you know, if someone came up to him afterward and said, like, man, your solo was great, he'd probably say, yeah, you know, that was a really awesome band to play with.
Yeah, right up.
Like, just like a complete deflection of the
Right.
compliment. And the people that I've been around who are kind of that similar big reputation tend to do similar things.
That's true.
You picked up the microphone again. You about to spit some wisdom?
No, my back was hurting, so I feel like I'm leaning over.
My back was. I thought you had the drawer thing figured out. You could
But it
pull
was down here. I felt like a little man. We might have to go back to the table. I don't know.
I do. I like the backdrop of this.
But I
though.
see. We'll get that monitor going back there, and we'll have the Chops logo back
There
there.
you go. That's good.
No, it is a fascinating thing being a teacher because there can be times that I'm ready to run into that rehearsal. I'm like, look out, this is going to be awesome. And about 7 minutes in, I'm like, Mayday, 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 right? And then there are some times where I come in with low energy and low expectations, and I'm like, look at me fly, right?
Yes. Okay. Wait. Sorry. Do you have more with that? I was
Well,
completely
I
going to
just-
cut you off.
Now, some of it does some of it I know, because I've actually said this to you. You're like, why did it go so well? And I said, because I planned. Right?
Yep.
And I've understood that the micro planning is not something I do a lot of. I understand the macro planning.
That's true. That's
But
true.
there's been some times when I've taken time for certain situations to do more micro planning,
Mhm.
and it's paid off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. And you've had those moments, like you come in and you talk to me.
Right.
Yeah, and you've shared your successes with that.
Like it
and
went better. Why? Well, because I prepared.
Now, some days you would say if you prepare, you actually do worse. Like we've talked about that too, because you
Yes.
like to feel free.
Yes.
You enjoy the pivot. you know?
Yes.
You enjoy the pivot, but some days you have found success with the planning. That's true.
Right.
You awoke a memory of this past year's Jazz Cafe with me. When you're talking about low energy and things actually working well. I told you I was sick on Jazz Cafe Day,
Yeah,
and I
Jack.
didn't realize it yet, but I was.
You told me after the fact.
I just remember sound checking with Club 406 after school, and I got the little ticklies in my throat, and I was like feeling weird in my stomach. I was like, oh boy.
Right.
Like only 8 hours to go of this day, but Club 406 got off the stage and it was fine. And their sound check was going. I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna go home. I'll do my thing. And then, dude, I just remember like hanging on by a thread for the rest of the night. And like, people would think like, well, you're not playing. Like, how hard can it be? But one thing that's totally different from concert band is like with jazz band, you have to remember all the things you need to say
Yes.
in between, like soloists, like any program notes, thanking people, introducing the next tune, whatever. And I just remember I was like hanging on by a thread, and like I was starting to kind of lose my voice a little bit toward the end, and I was like kind of taking some time to speak on the microphone. And I honestly didn't remember much of the performance. But then when we listened in class later, the kids had a good run.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's way better than I remember. And I didn't think
Yeah.
it was bad, but I was like, oh, this was good. This was really cool. So that's just like, those moments of low energy, they may happen. But I think part of that is like what's going on in your process. Because you can probably get away with those moments if they're infrequent or rare, if the kids have kind of been set up with what they need to do and how they need to roll.
Right.
So those are still not fun to experience, those low energy days, and sometimes
Well,
they're a choice.
that speaks well though of your process. If you were also speaks well of your acting skills of being able to cope
Oh, sure.
and get through something.
I don't know if you think this. I think it's easier to be sick while you're I shouldn't say be sick. Be low energy at work than feel that, like you feel tired at work, because you can always push past that.
Yeah.
But I don't like feeling tired at home because I have no reason to fake anything.
You have no resistance.
You
and
know
you're just-
resistance.
You're just like, oh, take
But
a
at
nap.
school, you can like push through and like,
Right.
yeah,
No, that's true.
that's true. Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter if you have a case of the grumpies at school because no one cares. I mean, not that it's a mean place, but it's like, I mean, you got to go. It's like
Gotta
you're
go.
at work,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
You got to
exactly.
go. You got to teach.
It's true. Yeah. That was so, looking back on that experience, it was interesting that like in the end it didn't really matter. Well, I imagine it didn't matter on how it affected the kids or affected me, other than how I can approach a microphone.
Well, that's good that you were low energy or just not feeling good, and then the results were still there because your process was solid.
See, now I feel backwards because we were just talking about giving teachers credit, and I was like not trying to.
I'm giving you credit, Jack.
Okay.
That's what you got. That's what
Okay.
you were looking for. You found it. Good job, Jack.
Yep,
You're a good teacher.
Digging for compliments. That's all I do on this show. Can you think of any moments like in your teaching career that stick out to you when something just like was not hitting and you like had to totally change, had to totally pivot? And maybe you didn't even know what you were doing in the pivot, but you figured it out.
I just remember having so many classes at a certain school that I taught at in Kentucky where I just had such a hard time connecting with what was going on in front of me. For some reason, this had such a hard time. And I remember one time my pivot was that for the entire class, I chose not to speak.
You gave your kids a silent treatment.
But not passive aggressive. It was like I was miming. I was teaching.
Oh.
It was a silent rehearsal.
Yes. Was that for your beginners?
Yes.
I remember you telling me about this. Did it work?
It was better.
Interesting.
And I was an awful teacher. I mean, I know there's some things brass pedagogy-wise that I did not do a good job on.
You played through the big end of the mouthpiece, right?
Exactly. I just don't understand why they were playing through the spit valve.
Mr.
I just
Peterson?
that it was bad. But I remember doing the silent rehearsal and trying to get a different energy and trying to get a different response, try to get some joy going. I know that sounds funny, but like not talking, but it was just, a different
Well, I'm sure
presence.
there was some like giggling from the
Sure.
kids as you're like trying to
Right. We're
you
doing
know, do
all that
whatever
kind of
you're
stuff.
going with.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember I came to you in my early years here, and I was like, dude, I'm struggling with the beginners, like, and kind of just getting the
Right.
flow going. And you suggested that.
Talking, not talking.
You said you could try silent rehearsal someday if you ever needed to. I don't think I did. I'm sorry to take it.
Thanks, Jack.
You give really good advice. I just wish I'd take it more often.
Yeah. Okay. This is not a good example, but it's a good story, so I'll tell it. But there was one year in marching band. It was your senior year in marching band. Clash of the Patterns. Okay. I had a particularly spirited group of flutes and clarinets. They played okay. There were some really good players, but they really had a struggle working as a group. Okay. There were some discipline problems in that group, but the overall mojo of the group, it just took a long time to get that Boeing jet off the ground. And we used to do this thing on Monday nights that were called pass-offs, where the kids had to chunk through part of the show and play it for you. And my group was probably in dead last. They were just like compared to the whole band, right? They were having the most problem. And then, so my pivot was, I threw something out there. It was kind of like it was like an office scene. I threw out an extremely high threshold of success that I was convinced they could not get to. So I think if they had if that in that hour and a half rehearsal, if they could get 55 chunks of the show done, either so each child had like 9 chunks to do, so whatever, 55 pass-offs. Basically 55 passing of a test. And I was like, there's no way they're going to do it, because I think they had been hitting at like 35, right? So I said, if you guys get to 55 or 65, whatever it was, I thought it was outrageous.
Okay.
I said, I will wear a skirt and I will dance in the cafeteria. And the episode of The Office, the Nard dog, or about the sales. And he said, I will get a tattoo. Remember that? He got a tattoo.
Yes, he did. I
Okay.
remember that episode.
So
yep.
the Nard dog. Okay, so I said, I will wear a skirt. I was probably half joking, but I said it with
you
enough.
weren't joking.
I said it with enough
There's
sincerity.
video evidence that you
Yeah,
were
I know.
not joking.
I know. I said it with a sense of sincerity that the kids were like, okay, I'm in.
And you're like, wait, no.
But at first I was like, great. I was like, Steve, you're such a genius. And it's like these kids are flying up and they're doing great little groups of pass offs, and there's like a whole flurry. And then I had kids coming up behind me. Hey, how many do we have? Okay, guys, we're at 25. We're at 25. We got an hour left. Let's go.
There's like some kid on a laptop in the back,
they're
like,
like-
with readers, like crunching
They're
spreadsheets. Like, wait,
come
hey,
on,
go,
come
go,
on,
go, go.
come. And I was like, okay, well, they really worked as a team. And then I think it was like the threshold was 55 and they got to 65. They smashed it. And they were hooping and hollering, and this group that had not been functioning well as a group came together over the idea that their teacher would wear a skirt and dance in front of the school cafeteria. And they were so excited. And I was like, you crazy kids. Like, that's what it took. And so they were all excited. So I guess mission accomplished, right?
I was going to ask, like, how do you feel about that?
I felt I felt in some ways happy that they had come together, but then in some ways I felt kind of like, really? Really? This is what it takes for you to,
Like a silly extrinsic motivation.
right, for you to like just do your job or to do the minimum of a
Right.
class you were behind anyway.
But on the other hand, that probably gave that group quite a bit of momentum
Right.
and like esprit de corps that was not really existing up to
Right.
that point. So
Right.
maybe it was really like a win.
It was a win, but then I had to do it.
You had to do it.
And so the skirt that I wore, what I decided to do is that at the time, the girls cross country team on Fridays or whenever they had meets or
Yeah.
whatever, they were a pretty funny group of kids. They were kind of fun. And they would wear trash bag dresses.
Right.
You remember that?
I do.
Okay, so they would like do their whole thing through the school day and wear trash bag dresses, and they might dress it up with like duct tape or something like that. So I got one of those trash bag dresses and I wore that like a skirt, right? But then also I went into the piano lab and I got a bunch of crazy hats.
Oh yeah, you had the big one that's in there, right? Did you have like the leg or the grass skirt?
I did have it for one of them. I had a grass skirt on too.
Oh, did you do every lunch?
All of them.
You had to go all
had
three
three
lunches
lunches.
one day?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was on a Friday.
What a good teacher.
And I cleared it with administration. I said, just want to let you know, I would like the permission to dance in front. So I came out with a boombox. I had a cowbell. And so there's like
Boombox, cowbell, and a dream.
500 kids in a lunch. And I came in there and I put on some crazy dance track. It was like Boom Boom Shank the Room.
I was just gonna say it's like your
It was the
bubblegum playlist.
fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Shake the room.
Yeah, and I came out there and I had this boombox cranking and I ran out there. And the first lunch that I did, I ran out there. I mean, it was kind of like that fight I talked about last week. Like, I just had to go in and like put my head down and run. Like, I just had to say, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. This is going to be so bad, but I got to do it. So the first thing I did, I started dancing by this group of kids I did not know at all. Like, I just started dancing. And I got up on the table. And when I got up, most of them were dudes. And when I got up on the table, most of them split.
Like Alice Alert in the cafeteria.
They
Strange
split.
man with
Because people started getting out on their phones and they started getting after it and like laughing, but they ran away. Wow. So I remember by the third one, I think Johnny Bennett did join me. It was on the tile part of the cafeteria.
Okay.
And more people kind of got up and it was like a dance circle. And some people actually did dance.
That's fascinating.
You know, so each one of those was probably 5 minutes. Then I got to rest. And 5 minutes and more and 5 minutes. And it was on a Friday before a performance. So I think, you know, it was like supposed to be like a rally thing, you know. So that was like low. I don't know what was going on with my teaching before that. Like what I was doing that and why our student output wasn't better. But it clearly wasn't. And I was like, well, I have a need. They have a need. I need to pivot and I need to do something different. And their outcome, the same kids, the outcome switched that night because of high extrinsic motivation. And I think some of it did stick, but it also became a little bit of, I think it got revisited later in the year, like.
Oh, I see.
Because, guys, you have this potential to do this, this, and this.
You needed your teacher to do something
right.
real silly.
Right. And can't you do more on your own? I
Mhm.
remember having those talks.
Sure.
Man, I put a lot of effort
You
into
did.
thought.
I
into
remember
trying to
seeing
get-
those Snapchats flying in that day, that lunch. I was like, what is going on? Wow.
So
We need video. We need video of that. Do you still have that?
it's on YouTube.
Okay, so I can put it in the reels.
Yeah.
I have your
it's-
permission
yeah,
to
it's a,
revisit
like
that.
band director dances at lunch or something like that.
Perfect.
It is pretty
That'll
cringy.
really throw off my algorithm.
It's really bad. But so the idea was, again, the low output or the low engagement. So you have to pivot hard and kind of shake You have to change the current, right? You have to change the current to get a different direction. And now, is that sustaining? I don't know. But that's an example of, I think about that.
I forgot about that whole thing. That's a good one. That's a good Steve Peterson lore right there.
That was good. And the administrator that I talked to was very appreciative of it. Said it was like it was educationally sound.
Educationally sound. That's what we're all about here on Chops Podcast. That's good.
I don't know. So it is. I think it is good to. It's fascinating. We'll have to talk more about this as we go through in the next season, like the next teaching season, about like how are you feeling about this rehearsal? Like, are you ready for this? Are you unsure? Are you prepped? Are you not prepped? How's your energy or not? You know, and then. Yeah. It is an interesting thing. You think about like doing marching band. Like, you know, there's going to be a marching band rehearsal that's going to be 85 degrees or 95 degrees. It's going to be hot, and you're just like, in the rehearsals, it's like, boo, just like low energy, right?
Yep.
Or it's an 8:30 and the sun is coming in right at their eyes, and it's not hitting right. And then you got to, but you can't just like keep on ramming it against the wall. Like, you know, just can't just driving the car against the wall. You got to come up with some change up. And I do think that process is interesting.
I wish, you know, when you think back to like college and like I feel like all we talk about in college is like lesson plan. You got to write your lesson plans. You got to cite which standards you're going to hit in each one. And I feel like throw your teachers in the deep end and just let them teach. No plan, just go.
Right.
Just go. Because that's how you learn to teach. You can plan all day. I was a horrible teacher, and I planned all day.
Right.
All day.
Right. Right. You need to know what you're going to teach.
Right.
You don't know how to teach it.
Say eighth notes, 12-year-olds, go.
Exactly.
Okay. Ta-ta.
But
no, we like Takademi in this podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Takademi. Okay. That's a whole different thing. Would be talking about lesson plans, but like, do you need to do lesson plans so you can just like build up some kind of like method and some sense of objectivity?
Because I feel like there are so few, like definitely in the minority of lessons you teach where you don't have to pivot. You're not going to have a perfect plan and execute it perfectly.
Right.
More than half the time.
Right.
Like that's like bread and butter of teaching is pivoting. That's something it's going to happen, and you got to do it. And the better you get at pivoting, the better you get at planning. Right?
It's true.
Because you can foresee what's going to happen. That's like highly effective teaching, as they say.
Right. Right.
Okay, so Steve, we're agreeing to it. No plans for the rest of marching band
no
season. Just
plans.
show up. Okay, kids, find chart 16. Do you mean 15? 16 is a hold. Yeah, just 8 count. It's 12 count. Okay.
Okay, you guys run the rehearsal.
I feel good? Pivot?
Pivot.
That's it.
That was the name of it.
That was the name of it because
But we were talking about
we were talking about gigs and how the environment at a gig. That'll be next week's podcast.
Yeah, we were talking about how things were going. Okay.
That's it. So if you like us, or even if you don't like us, follow us on TikTok at Chops_podcast. Podcast. YouTube, Chops Podcast, and on Instagram at Chops_podcast. And you can subscribe to our actual podcast or video podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. That's it.
Okay. 4th of July coming up.
That's true.
And then another 10 days we'll be in here for marching band.
Yep. We'll be here every week.
Every day.
Except Fridays this summer. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop. Got that Friday off.
Yep, that's
okay.
it.
So that's it.
That's it.
For Steve Peterson.
Jack Hinkle.
I'm out of here.